I'm Eric Manser, and I'm head of product marketing, but my job is to tell Ziflow stories. In the window right alongside me, let me introduce Lisa White from Viasat. Hi, Lisa, and welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. Let me do some homework here, or maybe show my work, I should say, and do a little bit of an introduction. Viasat is a global communications company that helps to shape how consumers, businesses, governments, and militaries from around the world communicate and connect. And they're actively developing the ultimate global communications network to power high-quality, reliable, secure, affordable, fast connections to positively impact people's lives. That's just what's written at the bottom of a press release. But wherever you are on the planet, you probably have a Viasat product either in your house or above your head. They own or operate several satellites in Earth's orbit. They deliver high-speed broadband internet for your business or for your home, and even on commercial flights. And that's not all. They're also a leader in providing tactical communications technology for military and government usage. So their products are also being used to keep us safe and secure. And that's always a good thing. Lisa, did I basically describe Viasat right?
Yeah, sounds great. You got it.
Now, tell me a little bit about your role and what you do as a director of marketing operations. First of all, where are you based, and what's your day-to-day like?
I'm at the headquarters today. Which is based in Carlsbad, California, and we just love it here. But my role really started in 2021, and prior to that, so I do have like 15-year experience of supporting large global organizations in optimizing their creative operations. So how they can get more done, addressing this ever increasing expectation of more assets, more higher volume, higher velocity, higher variety of assets. And so to really help teams become more efficient at doing that and getting them the tools and the resources they need and finding those areas of opportunity. So I would say my day-to-day really varies. Many times I've had technology implementation projects that I'm leading and like planning and then implementing. And with that, these days, there comes sometimes integrations and understanding the content and of the data. And other times I'm drafting workflow diagrams in Miro, or I'm writing processes, or just helping a variety of users with troubleshooting or whatever kind of problems come up throughout the execution of marketing.
So operations really is a combination really of strategic goals, helping the team figure out the right path forward, but also literally the tactics of workflow diagrams, integrations, which we'll talk about in a little while. Like your fingers are in a lot of soups, and you're always trying to sort of keep the team and keep the process moving forward.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's like, the orchestration of people, process, and technology to optimize the efficiency and effectiveness of marketing. So, it's fingers in soup maybe, but or connecting an orchestra.
Well, I mean, I was going to say you are literally the tap 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 the conductor, and you're literally conducting the orchestra. I think that's a great way to describe it. I love that. So, one of the things that I talked about in the intro as I sort of introduced Viasat is the notion of connectivity and communications. Like I mentioned, satellites in the air and broadband modems in many people's homes. The whole notion of Viasat is connecting people, whether that is, the homes down the street or even via satellite, remote and underserved areas. So how does that mission, how does that, feel good approach to communication, how does that shape your approach to creative processes and sort of the notion of operations?
Well, so here at Viasat, we have a decentralized marketing organization, meaning we have marketers that sit in business segments in various regions globally. And as we continue to grow globally, I really enjoy where I get to sit at the kind of corporate or home office level, where we can provide the systems and the standard processes to our global team members, because then that becomes the one place where we can all of our content can come in to Ziflow, for example, and have a standard way of reviewing. So it kind of can help take what can be happening in different marketing teams with different initiatives and their different timelines, but they all still then can come together and we can feel like we're connected as one team.
That's interesting. One of the big words you mentioned a second ago was orchestration, but what you're sort of talking about is also consolidation. It's everybody on the same page, literally, right?
Yeah, I mean, prior to having a tool like Ziflow, prior to online reviews, you have different people emailing different people all over the place. It becomes quite chaotic, and because of that inefficiency, you're losing time. You're losing the kind of learning you can have to get more efficient as a team moving forward. And so, having it all centralized gives us the visibility to what's happening, where, like, for example, for legal reviews, where do marketers need to learn more about things to watch for, and where our lawyers are seeing in a centralized place what the messaging is that marketing wants to put forward. And so it really helps to connect. It's so much better than email. I cannot imagine.
You'd be surprised. I hear that in a lot of Ziflow stories. It's so much better than email. You mentioned the legal team. I've talked to a whole host of customers where, there are certain standards that are enforced by a marketing team, centralized or decentralized. The marketing team has certain brand standards. But you mentioned the legal team, and you mentioned, I talked about in the outset, you work with governmental organizations. So everything from military to maritime to aviation, the standards go beyond simply what looks good on a one-page information sheet. It needs to meet a level of quality and a level of regulatory standards that far exceed what the average marketer would like. How does Ziflow play a role in sort of making sure those boxes are ticked, making sure that, nobody with stripes on their shoulders gets upset about what is said and how it looks?
So a couple of years ago, when I like I said, I came in 2021, and there was no standard review and approval process. It was, like I said, some of it was email, some of it was in another tool, but everyone was doing their own thing and sending it to certain reviewers that were so we have, just to give you some context, we have like 40 different legal and regulatory reviewers, and the way that they're each reviewing for a certain business area, content, certain pieces of content. So like maybe one is government and one is more over the fixed broadband business. But then there's other things that might be red flags that we want other subject matter experts to weigh in on. So obviously having a tool where it's all centralized is the way we do it. We have a single marketing liaison that receives them on stage one, the first legal stage, and then she gives a kind of a preview. She gives a read to understand who else needs to see this, and then she adds those other reviewers, and we go from there.
So much of what your team does, I mean, you have competitors out there. You have to put your best brand foot forward, and I'm sure that design plays a role. Your brand team plays a role. No matter how centralized or decentralized your marketing team is, you've got to have others who sort of have a broader vision of the way Viasat presents itself to the world. They also have to play a role. How has Ziflow helped you facilitate those different avenues of communication? Have you used multi-stage workflows? Do you really lean on the quarterback or the traffic cop to sort of make things go in the right place? In what way have you sort of leveraged Ziflow to help make sure that the process is collaborative across a multitude of departments as possible?
Yeah, I know, kind of culturally and historically, it's been kind of, a lot of the work would come through the in-house team, and therefore there was this assumed brand alignment, brand governance happening within that process. But like last year, we acquired this other company in Marsat, and that's when we started to see, we're going to need to really make sure we're seeing because as the brand needed to, the brand content needed to move to a Viasat brand and some of the messaging. And so really like so much of that, that dialogue and that collaboration and that refinement was happening through Ziflow. Another example I'm thinking of is earlier this year, last year and early this year, we're working on migrating from the Inmarsat website to the Viasat website. And so with that and those content reviews, they were being done where it was the authors of the pages creating screenshots and emailing them. And it's like, okay, no. So we worked with Ziflow support and our IT to figure out a process to use those interactive proofs in Ziflow, but you're proofing off of a locked authoring site. So we were able to come up with a solution which works fantastic, and our publishers and developers, like, they were able to execute through all of those like hundreds of pages of reviews in much more efficient time than had we gone back with screenshots and emails.
So you're migrating, basically an entire website's worth of content, and that could be deep, rich feature content, or even, blog posts, videos, things like that. All of that has to move over to Viasat's site. And you've got to you're using Ziflow to do quality assurance, quality control over that migration, basically.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of the things were worked out before coming into Ziflow, but at least Ziflow gave us the one standard where we could get the documented approvals of brand and of legal, which was really important, because you can imagine how you might lose track of things if you didn't have a single record, a single source of truth.
So you've got people either inside or outside of your organization that are able to use intake forms to submit content for review. How have you set that up in such a way that allows for it to be more of a scalable solution? I know a lot of people who may be watching this video, they may have their quarterback or their traffic cop is the person by which all content goes through, and then they create the proofs. But using intake forms, the creatives, the designers, they can essentially create the proofs themselves using intake forms. How have you, utilized that technology or those features in order to help your process scale?
When we look at the user experience, because with technology, you want to make sure you have a plan for improving the adoption of the tools, because we've all been on teams where people roll out a tool, but then nobody ever supports the tool, and then people stop using the tool. And so we want to make sure like what we're doing works for the user and is an absolute minimum amount of steps. And so when we learned, I think this was after we already signed with Ziflow, but we learned about the intake form, we were like, that's awesome, because we didn't have that before. And it's so simple, like anyone can go to a form and answer a few. We actually built in some custom fields into our form so we could capture some data. But it's very simple. And it's not like we have to train everybody to use the Ziflow dashboard, which was very helpful, especially when we have like over 600 users, or not users, but 600 reviewers in the system. And, not everybody's tech savvy, especially our lawyers. They're just like, they're just like, keeping it as simple as possible has definitely been, helpful and a huge feature. So the intake form, they just go to the form, fill it out. And then what we did is build these custom flows where upon submission, it goes to a certain person. The proof gets generated, it goes to a person who gets a notification. Or the proof gets generated and it kicks off maybe it's a 3-stage workflow where we have an internal review, stage 1, and then we have the automation set to where when stage 1 is approved or approved with changes, it can go to stage 2 automatically. And then once that's approved or approved with changes, it can go to the legal review. So we built in all this automation so to really minimize a proof owner having to go in every single day and, okay, where's this at? Now I need to send it here. And then it becomes this disjointed flow. And you potentially, anytime part of a process is waiting on a person, I dig in deeper. It's like, how can we remove that person from this step? Not the whole person, but just how can we remove this step? Because anytime something's being handed off, you're waiting. So the fact that Ziflow can do simultaneous, people can be in the tool simultaneously, huge time saver. And then the staging lets us kind of control who's seeing it at what stage.
We talked about intake forms there. You've got multiple stage workflows. You've got a whole host of perhaps tech-savvy or non-tech-savvy reviewers who are using Proof Viewer. Were there any other features, either micro or macro, within Ziflow that sort of made you go, whoa, like the same reaction that you had with intake forms? Like, oh my gosh, like this is going to take a bad process and make it better. Like, was there any other feature like that? You were like, whoa, that's crazy.
The creative team, everybody loves the interface. We love just the way you can manage your dashboard. It's very clean design, which is helpful when you have a team of creatives. That's very important, actually. Mm-hmm. Whenever reviewers learn, even though we train on this, a lot of times it's too much and people don't understand the versioning and how you can compare versions. People are like, oh my gosh, that's amazing when they first learn about it. And so that makes me happy. And whenever somebody's doing like a separate proof and they're not versioning it, I'm like all over that. No, you need to version it because you don't see the difference because you're submitting the proof, but the difference to the reviewers is huge because they can compare. And when you're like a lawyer, let's say, seeing a proof for a second time, they're all about, I just want to see what I changed, and they don't want to start from scratch, obviously. So
Viasat has adopted not just a review and approval tool, but also a project management system in Monday.com. I'd love to have you talk to me a little bit about how the integration between Ziflow and Monday.com supports the process that you've created. I'm sure in a lot of ways, many of the integration allows it to be one and the same. And then what specific updates from Ziflow are being pushed to Monday.com, and how do those updates sort of keep projects moving in the right direction?
The reason for Ziflow was first started with a move from Workfront to Monday.com. From an enterprise level. So we implemented Monday.com for the creative team, but part of my implementation plan had to include a proofing tool. So I researched, who integrates with Monday.com. And I was so impressed with Ziflow. And because I thought, as soon as I saw it visually, I thought, well, our creative team is going to love it because we had mixed emotions about moving from a system that was working very well with lots of assets flowing and moving to 2 new tools at the same time. So, we built the integration, again, back to the user. We don't want them to have to go to Ziflow if they could stay in Monday. So the only people that go to Ziflow really might be just a handful of people that are managing a large volume of assets. But they can see it from Monday. So in Monday, we have these columns. So we have a column for the proof link. So that was something that the team wanted, was a public link, so that when you're in Monday, you're looking at your 100 projects and you're looking at, you can see the status says in review, but like it could stay in review for a week. Like, what does in review mean? So we have a link to the proof. It also reflects back the status of the proof. So if it's pending, and then it'll also show the stage of the proof. So if it's an internal review versus legal review versus stakeholder review. So then it's just a little bit more of a status identifier and cue to people that are managing large volume of items on the single creative board, for example.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, the notion of moving from one system to two, it makes it so the two systems need to be so deeply connected that, you know, in the user's mind, it has to feel like they're not using two different tools. It has to feel like they're using one, or at the very least, if they know they're using two, the connection is so seamless, there isn't a disruption in their mind of having to switch from one to the other. Have you found users have been, you know, it's easier, it's easy-ish, it's easy for them to adopt a two-solution system because of the firmness or the tightness of that connection?
Yeah, I do think, and believe me, I for many years have been a Adobe Workfront fan, and so when leadership says no, we're moving to Monday, it's like, oh, that's not going to work for creative. I was like, and so I was totally proven wrong, and I really think like anyone can build a board in Monday and kind of manage their tasks in Monday. But to be able to integrate the proofing tool was really what sold it for not only me, but for the creative team as well. Is having it all integrated, and the link is right there, and you don't have to navigate through a bunch of weird tabs to find the comments. It's so much cleaner. So definitely, in hindsight, happy that we made the transition.
I want to talk about other challenges. You know, when I talk to folks before they start implementing Ziflow, they tell me about how broken their process is, and even further broken by the amount of assets that they have to manage. So if you're a legal team and you're within Word documents, you can track changes in Word, or if you've got stuff within Google Sheets, like you can, you know, look at comments and suggestions there. But the minute you upload a video, first of all, where do you upload it where you can add comments, you know, frame by frame, things of that nature? If you're trying to do a website, good luck. I mean, someone's going to have to get access to your website management platform in order to have that level of collaboration. And that's where Ziflow comes in to sort of consolidate all of those asset reviews. Can we talk a little bit about like how Viasat has got assets across a multitude of file formats, assets, you know, different languages, different regionalizations all over the place? Like, how does your team use Ziflow to sort of stay organized and manage all of those different assets, those campaigns, like the largesse of what it takes to make Viasat marketing function?
When we initially launched, we had all the static, all the video. The video team loves the tool. It's just fantastic. the features of commenting on video. And then when it came to the interactive proofs, like I mentioned earlier, we had some challenge with the login on the authoring site, but then, you know, we're so excited that got resolved and that we figured out, and I wrote a process. So users that are authors follow certain steps, and then the proof gets generated, and without that login screen. So that was like technically a new type of content that we just added recently, like I said.
Being a reviewer, perhaps in a work from home environment, you are alone by yourself in charge of getting something done, getting an asset reviewed, feedback left, approved, whatever. But you think about it from a perspective that we're all rowing this boat in the same direction. If we're all following the right steps, we're all following the right processes, the whole boat's going to go faster and where we want to get to. Like it's suddenly just the act of being an active participant in a review process helps the whole process go better because everyone is bought in and is, you know, rowing in the right direction. Does that make sense? Is that sort of the way you think about it, at least the way you just mentioned it?
It's amazing, yeah, when you think about having a tool to be able to move the reviews fast and save the separate silo conversations in Slack or Outlook and like have it all together for collaboration and review and approval. You're making me think of just change management. People going from whatever their current process is, even if it's as inefficient as email, or if you're going from another tool to a new tool, like you have to be empathetic. All the users are going to go through this period of, not all of them, some of them will champion and be excited to learn a new tool, but others, like it slows them down. And so it's all about just reassuring them it's only for like a couple of weeks, you'll get up and running, you'll develop that muscle memory of knowing where to click, and you'll be flying and you'll love it. And that is the experience. That is what happens. And so I do always feel a little pain for people including myself, having to learn new tools. So.
Yeah. Look, nobody was Max Verstappen the first time they sat behind the wheel of a car, right? Like it takes time to get that good at it. So, being the notion of change management as something that to be looked at as motivational as opposed to a requirement, I think that's a really valuable skill to learn and to employ in the course of being, an orchestrator of creative operations, right? We talked a second ago about impact, about insights, about measurement. And I think, you as a creative operations person, that this is an emerging discipline. There's not a million people and 2 million people on LinkedIn that identify themselves as a creative operations person. It is stepping into the light as something that people do for a living. So I think as a new discipline, there isn't a really core set of metrics or KPIs, like this is the way we measure success. But you mentioned a few of these from an anecdotal perspective, speed to get the project done or identifying hotspots. Like, what kind of outcomes have you seen in and around your team after starting to use Ziflow?
Well, really, it comes down to measuring the cycle time. How long does it take to get through this version, and being able to have the data to go in and identify any issues. We're reducing brand and legal compliance kind of risk, which ends up ultimately saving the money. I don't know, it's countless. I can't.
It's got to be immeasurable. Avoiding that legal risk or the risk to a potential contract. It's got to be massive, right?
Right. So that's like a huge. I don't even know like how we would quantify that, but that's just a huge outcome. The other, really just having that improved tracking to see where everything's at. Because even in the Ziflow viewer, you could see, if it was sent, if it was opened, and kind of monitor that progress. And, and if a proof manager is anything like me, they're going to be reminding people every day if they need to. So, it's just having that visibility and, which it's not like your review is just in your Outlook inbox and nobody knows what's going on and have they looked at it? Did they delete it? Like nobody knows. But when it's all there in one system and everybody that has access to that proof can see that same, it's very transparent. And then it helps to improve accountability and help us all get better. And the users are satisfied. You have your customer satisfaction because they see the value.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, in a sense, it's so hard to measure things like accountability, transparency, team satisfaction, things like that. You can't really put a number on that, but my gosh, you know what it's like when you don't have those things. What it's like when you're, getting read the riot act about something going wrong. And the fact that Ziflow has led to some level of harmony within the organization, that's almost immeasurable. You can't put a percentage on that, right?
Like we measure what we can in the tool. Like we can measure volume over time, duration, and how many are getting like how many are getting changes required, and then wanting that to see that go lower and lower over time, and then the approved as is, kind of wanting to see that grow over time, wanting to see the durations shrink over time. And like for the volume, like when we added that other company, of course, I was worried, oh, there's going to be this like double the volume coming through our system, and then we were able to, because we were able to monitor the volume over time, we felt better about, okay, it's not the first month it was crazy. We were a little bit, is this a trend? Do we need to like hire more lawyers or like, so, but thankfully it's all kind of balanced out, and that probably has to do with the transparency and the staying on top of kind of the flow of things and making sure that everything is resourced appropriately.
Let me finish up with this question here. I think this is more, looking towards the future. Our hope is that Ziflow stays a part of Viasat's creative process for a long time. How do you see Ziflow continuing to support Viasat's efforts? More potential acquisitions, more expansion, more, more of whatever. Where do you see Ziflow continuing to support that team in the coming years?
Some of the one feature I'm really interested in, which is that proof gallery, where you can see, like, for one campaign, we do a lot of events. So like for one event, we can have all of the assets on a single proof or in one kind of page that can show that context. I think that's really exciting. And that will help because instead of reviewing each asset in a silo and a lawyer being like, didn't I already read this? Like seeing it all in context, I think is going to be another really helpful feature that we look forward to.
I completely agree with you. The ability for a legal team or really any reviewer to be able to see a multitude of assets that are part of the same campaign in a context that allows them to compare them quickly and easily, a couple of clicks, it makes it so much easier than trying to think about it out of context. So I really believe that is sort of the future of doing campaign-level multi-asset reviews. And as the team grows, as the process grows, as the projects grow, that's going to become that much more valuable.
Yep. Great. Looking forward to it.
I love it. Lisa, I cannot thank you enough for telling me your Ziflow story. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time. I genuinely, truly, very much appreciate it.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
And thank you for watching this episode of Ziflow Stories. For more exciting content about creative operations and really collaboration more broadly, including working with the lawyers, please head over to our YouTube channel and make sure you click the like and subscribe button so you're notified for each and every new Ziflow story that we tell. For Lisa White, the amazing Lisa White from Viasat, I'm Eric Manser from Ziflow, and remember, great content connects, inspires, and transforms. And to make it happen, you got to keep your ideas moving, your stakeholders engaged, and your team motivated. So until next time, let your content flow.